za ju bigi ju ju me do dang ri ra le ji ni de ke ma de sang ge shin dum le de to ge nam da shin na ro jo yi dam bang go ro ra na men de la da ya me. So for the second session, then good evening. For the second session, as you know from our previous gatherings, the text, this precious text, precious Garland, is not only touches on one aspect or a part of the path, but it goes through the entire path, through the entire path, the great path to the state of Buddhahood. So this is really it's really in its scope, it's infinite. Therefore, then, for someone like me to talk on this, it's very difficult. Nevertheless, since due to certain causes and conditions, somehow you all end up with this person, with this text and with the mic like this. Somehow, for the time being, okay, you have to put up with this. You have to put up with this. So I was thinking, because this is the case, this is my state, then what I find something like easy, to make it easy for myself, is when I approach texts such as this, then instead of really trying to understand and go into the great depths of the text, I like to try to understand it from the place where I'm at now, and this has, of course, some advantages. One being that I don't have to do much preparations. So then I can think, and whatever comes into mind, something like thinking aloud, like this, thinking aloud. And anyhow, I know that I have a very good group of people who are really well versed in the practice of patience. So then with these things, then somehow I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable doing it in this way. And as you know, that what I really enjoy about these programs, participating in these programs, is when you start to interact, your interaction, then this brings much joy to everyone joyful, and also personally, then for me this is very helpful in getting a new perspective, a new understanding. That there is, it helps to something like complete the picture, to complete the picture, to complete the understanding. It helps very much in that way. And before we begin with our interaction, just to something like to just recap what our first session is first with paying homage to the Buddha, and this is in a way then the practice of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then how to actualize that is then explained in the next verses, in the subsequent verses. First, going, sort of categorizing these two. The first is elevation or ascendance, which is referring to high rebirth, and then the second being definite good or highest good, which is referring to liberation. And then the causes for that, the method to actualize those two realizations or those two attainments is then by way of engaging in faith and wisdom. And then faith here is the faith, having trust in causes and conditions and their results, their effects, and specifically karma and its results. And then wisdom, referring to what we call the view, the world view, how things appear to us. So how we view at the world around us, the world we are in, the world we are experiencing, our view. So this is referring to all these different layers of view, and which then culminates with what we call the view of emptiness, the view of shunyata. So these two, faith is the method for actualizing high rebirth, and then wisdom, the view of nature of subject, object, phenomena. This is then the method to that takes on the form of liberation. So this is something like what we went through in the first session, and with some conversations with friends, I think, yes, before, as there was one line which states that what is higher rebirth? Higher rebirth is happiness. What is liberation? Then liberation is Dharma, right? So then happiness. Generally, we all strive for happiness, and so the question is then, yes, it is true that we strive for happiness, but striving for happiness, that is not the end goal. Striving for happiness, happiness itself, how can it be the goal? How can it be the ultimate goal? In other words, for those who aspire on this path to the state of Buddha, happiness, striving for happiness, is not the drive for our partaking, our engagement, our engaging and practicing this great path. So this this question then I think really made me think, and it is true that simply striving for happiness is not what drives the bodhisattvas on the path to the state of Buddha. So then there's got to be more to it than just that. Striving for happiness at a personal level, when in relation to oneself, I wish for happiness, I wish to be happy. This mind, this thought, yes, is not the drive, is not what drives the bodhisattvas along this great path. Of course not. But is somehow connected to the great path, to bodhicitta itself. How so? It is through our self-cherishing mind, let us just use that term, through cherishing ourselves, right? Through cherishing ourselves. Only through that we can learn to cherish others. Only through that we can learn to cherish others. Without cherishing oneself first, then there is really no way to cherish others. There is no reference point. There is no reference point. So, even though it is not what directly drives the bodhisattvas, still it played a role in the bodhisattvas generating this great mind of awakening, the awakening mind. This is very much connected, and it is something like the underlying cause for bodhicitta, And even though bodhisattvas, those who are on this great path, strive for being a Buddha, being fully awakened, becoming a fully awakened being is again not the ultimate goal of the Buddhas, nor the ultimate goal of the Bodhisattvas. Being in that fully awakened state is simply a tool, a method for the ultimate goal, for achieving the ultimate goal, which is benefiting others. Benefiting others. This is the ultimate goal of the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. Benefiting others. Benefiting others. Not the state of Buddha, not Buddhahood. Buddhahood is simply a method, is simply a method. One of the many methods. So this sense, taking on this responsibility of benefiting others, of alleviating the suffering of others, this arises from the mind that wishes for happiness for oneself. It arises from that. If I remember it correctly, then His Holiness Gyalwar Rinpoche would say that if you really want to cherish yourself, then cherish others, right? I think His Holiness says it like this: if you really want to cherish yourself, then cherish others. Cherishing others is the true way to cherish oneself. It's the true way to cherish oneself. And then the second question, 전부 등등님 디 산 디 카바티시키요. The second question, here today we are gathered in this room in the Gompa, and our mind is now very much in a way aligning with the few verses that we covered. We are still fresh from that. We are in that space. Outside of this Gompa, in the world, in samsara, there are many things going on. Many things going on. And we can see, all we need to do is look at the news, and we see so many different forms of sufferings. So many different forms of sufferings we can see. people going through very difficult times, from natural disasters, from man-made disasters, and all these conflicts all over. Sometimes it's overwhelming. It feels really overwhelming. So then, in this situation, then what is the role of Dharma? What do we do with all these verses? How can they be relevant? How do we bring these teachings to a relevant level? When we are in the comfort of our gomba, small gomba, in this room, and then try to reflect, let's say, try to generate compassion, compassion for sentient beings, it may seem a little easy, but then soon as we hear what's going on around, people getting hurt, the conflicts, etc., then how do we meditate on compassion? How do we not lose our compassion? This is one question. And this is, I think, especially if one is affected by all these terrible things that are going on around the world, if one is affected personally, then I think it makes it that much difficult, When it happens, when a person, a loved one, is hurt in a conflict, many miles, thousands of miles away, then it's so difficult, how to process this, how to process it. Or just to even imagine one's loved ones getting hurt, becoming a victim in such conflicts, and then to meditate on compassion towards those who have done the harm. Then how do we meditate on compassion in this situation when I am affected at a personal level? So I was thinking, in this situation, then to not focus too much on the pain. I think this is one thing. Of course, saying that is easier said than done, but at some point, I think by trying to take some to have some space, I think this is helpful, to create some space and not like holding the pain here, but to create something like a space, safe space, something like this, not to the point that one becomes desensitized, of course not to that level, but at a manageable level where to process it, not on the personal level, but something like to perhaps zoom out, in a way to zoom out, and also to look at it from a different perspective, This compassion here in the context of the graded path, then yes, there are this very something like concentrating on the suffering of suffering. I think sometimes it's like it almost like stings oneself, when concentrating on the suffering of suffering. In those moments, then I think to zoom out of this just one aspect of suffering, and then to think about the all-pervasive suffering. Yeah? This is, I think, this may be helpful. Many times when we have these compassion issues, right? It's something always like, we have this story, I think somewhere like in the monasteries. One person was reciting, "May all sentient beings be happy. May all sentient beings be free from suffering." And then he said, but this sentient being, so-and-so, I don't know about him. So there's something like that, So in this case, then, when we say suffering, when we look at suffering, to not just look at the suffering of suffering, that gut-wrenching pain, not really focus on that, but really to look at life as suffering. That, this is the all-pervasive suffering, the suffering of conditionality, right? our lives, this is suffering. There is no end, our life and suffering. No, our life is suffering by its nature. So, concentrating on that, then I feel that this will help in dealing with many of these compassion issues, right? Compassion issues. Somehow, looking at this, the good thing about seeing this all-pervasive suffering is that I feel that there is this equalizing effect. Whereas if we concentrate too much on the first aspect of suffering, then this doesn't seem to have that equalizing effect. Rather, it may really separate. It may separate more if you go and focus and go too much in that direction. So to concentrate on life as suffering. Life is suffering, and this is exactly as Dharma Kirti mentions, that this is what the Buddha's intent was. This was the Buddha's intent. That was the message. That was the message of the Buddha, is that life, as we know it, that is suffering. So then I think like this, maybe then hopefully this helps in sort of having more impartial compassion, right? Impartial, right? Impartial compassion. Okay, so now I will stop the talking, and if you could join, and of course we have also friends joining through a Zoom, right? And before I didn't, when I couldn't recall the name, the Sanskrit, then a friend from Germany, Bob, he sent this text message. Nagarjuna wrote a letter to his friend, King Gautamiputra Satavahana. So, Gautamiputra Satavahana. Tibetan we say Deju Sangbo, Gebu, Deju Sangbo. So, Gautamiputra Satavahana. So thank you. So now I think if you would like to join, then please. And do we have the mic? Okay. So now begins the Q&A.
Rinpoche, I've been wondering about the process of mental labeling in relationship to the five skandhas in general, and specifically the form skandha. The form, our sense organs and the sense objects, are they created by mental labeling?
Yes, mental labeling to a certain extent, and also by karma, right? Actions. Before, at one of these Mind and Life conferences, there was this question of, whether a tree leaf falling from the tree, now is that by karma or is that by like nature? So this is an interesting question. The world, the planets are formed and caused by karma and clashes. So our planet result of karma of the inhabitants from many, many lifetimes. So through also individual karma and also collective karma. Every molecules and so forth is connected with karma, and then from this earth, a part of it, then parts of that comes and then gives rise to this plant and the leaves, and this leaf falling is very much connected with gravity, with air, ether. Either, okay. Yes, either. Yeah, either. Ether. So, like this, then it's somehow connected with karma. But the direct cause is maybe not the karma, but definitely karma is somehow involved. Yeah? But the direct cause, it's through, of course, gravity and some other conditions. So all these parts that we have, when we talk of how this universe was formed, and like stardust, and how these small particles later took on different aspects, and then which sort of some parts of that turn into the physical state of sentient beings. Somehow there might be a connection there, right? So if you go like this, then definitely all of our physical forms, going from the coarse to the most subtle level, are all connected with karma. all connected with karma, and also they are labeled, right? So I think like this, yes. And then please.
One follow-up on that. The process of labeling is not simply, and this is a question, not simply the words that we have for an object, but the story that we have about the reality, the story that we tell ourselves that culture has inculcated us with, our culture, our language, our parents, our education. Is all of that part of mental labeling?
I would like to think so, yes. Yes. They are all part of that. They are all involved. Because when I label a table, and when someone else's label a table, even though we may both call it table, but each of us, depending on where we come from or how we are feeling at that moment, we see different tables. We are labeling different tables. The basis, what appears to us as table, is it would be very difficult to compare, right? To compare. So you're right, yes.
So the story, if we could really understand the Dharma and incorporate it in our narrative, we would have the best story ever told.
Yes. Yes. And also the worst.
And it's the unending story.
Yes. 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 Thank you. Thank you.
Rinpoche, earlier on this afternoon, your talk, you were talking about the higher rebirth. I'm very confused, still not quite clear about exactly what higher rebirth means. You mentioned about sharing of love, developing love, helping love to others. Is that the cause of the higher rebirth, or the higher rebirth will give the effect of developing love and sharing love for others? So what exactly is your definition, the meaning of higher rebirth? Which is the cause and which is the effect?
First thing, higher rebirth is the state of rebirth in which one can develop compassion, and by engaging in the 10 virtuous actions. This is how I understood it at that moment, and just said it like that. And then the second part, the cause and effect. Then when we think of just the 10 virtuous actions and higher rebirth, if we think only in just 2 instances, and if it was possible to simply freeze those 2 in time, then the 10 virtuous action would be the cause, and the higher rebirth would be the effect, like permanently like that. But that is not the case. And so, in a way, 10 virtuous actions, they cause higher rebirth, and within higher rebirth, then higher rebirth also serves as the foundation in which one can also then practice the 10 virtuous actions, and then which gives rise to future higher rebirth. And so it sets off like this chain reaction, right? And there's this one verse, I think, from, I think it's this one, the same text, Precious Garland, where it's something like turning the fire, like the fire branding, yeah? So if you do it very fast, it looks like a circle, right? So something like that. So it's a circle that it's not linear, right? It's not linear. What is the opposite of linear? Non-linear. Oh. Yes, yes. I was expecting something very big. So, okay, linear, non-linear. Very nice, very nice. Yes.
Non-linear has no shape. Non-linear, no shape.
Yes, yes. So no shape,
Okay.
no shape,
I mean, if you say it's non-linear, then what shape is it?
no shape.
Well, people are making suggestions. It's not circular, it's non-linear.
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm
Yes.
saying, well, what shape is it?
So non-circular, circular, non-circular circle. I don't know. Yes, yes, something like that. Yes. Yeah, but the point, of course, is very clear. Is that it's not frozen in time, right? That's I think the point, right? It's ever changing, and they give rise to each other, and there is this dependent. There is this interdependent between the cause and effect. At one point, it is the cause. In a different time, it is also the effect. And then at a different time, again, it's the cause. So there's that interdependent aspect. So I think like this. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche, and thank you for being here teaching. Today, when you were talking about faith, was very interesting to me because I feel like in our culture, the way we experience and use the word faith is almost the opposite of what I was hearing today. We put faith in somebody else to rescue us. We extend, we wish that somebody would help us. If I look at the synonyms, well, I can't find them now, but they're not my empowering by the wisdom of the Buddhas. They're not that. And so that was very helpful for me when you were speaking about faith today as my being able to access and become better and grow in the way that the Buddha's example is. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Could you talk more about how cherishing others leads to cherishing ourselves, or how we should how cherishing others translates into how we should properly cherish ourselves.
Cherishing others. Cherishing others is the way, is the real way of cherishing oneself. However, this is not to say that something like out of the blue that we should immediately jump into bodhicitta, that we should immediately jump into cherishing others, that we should immediately offer all our services, open all the doors, and close all boundaries. This is not the meaning of that. Because many times it happens, sometimes people really, I don't know, it's like, it seems like when I look from my viewpoint, some people, when they think of bodhisattva, bodhicitta, cherishing others, it's almost like they make themselves so small, and then almost like turn into a piece of mat for people to simply walk on and tremble like that. And I don't think that is healthy. I don't think that works in the long term. So we have to be mindful. We have to know what it means to cherish others. And in that practice, then again, to always remind ourselves that yes, in these great sutras, in these great scriptures, sometimes we across some lines in the sutras and talking about a particular bodhisattva who has attained a certain stage and is able to really control the mind, really able to control the emotions. And when we come across such verses, such lines, such teachings, it is important not to make this mistake of immediately jumping right into it, and then trying to be like that bodhisattva. This is one thing to keep in mind. If this works, that's great. If this works, that's great. But in the event that this is not working, then we have different levels of practicing, cherishing others, right? So this is, I think, always good to remind yourself, to remind oneself that there are different ways of practicing bodhicitta. There isn't one way of practicing bodhicitta. It is not just one way. It is not just, when we say there's only one way, it sounds a bit like, what's that saying? It's my way or the highway, right? So whenever we fall into that, there's only one way, then we have to, then I think that statement, this my way or the highway thing is going to pop up soon, right? That thinking. So there are different ways of developing that bodhicitta, developing bodhicitta. So this is important to keep in mind, and to always to get a feel of really one's ability, one's capacity, and in this way then to gradually work your way to developing bodhicitta. So in the process of developing bodhicitta, then to connect our bodhicitta practice to our wish for happiness, peace, ultimate peace, nirvana. To link this two is very helpful. To link this two is very helpful. It helps to, I think, anchor ourselves, to find ground, to be grounded, to be stable, to bring stability in our bodhicitta practice. Wishing for ultimate peace. I wish for ultimate happiness, ultimate peace, nirvana, true cessation. This is peace. This is the ultimate happiness. The Tibetan word for happiness, deva, and the Tibetan word for virtuous actions, virtue, geva. Deva and geva can be used interchangeably, right? So at the causal level, it is used as geva, virtue, and at the resultant, it is deva, happiness, peace, ultimate peace. So to begin from there, and this is, why we have the graded path, so that we don't make this mistake of jumping straight into bodhicitta, but rather we train the mind. We go through this graded, that we approach bodhicitta systematically. There is a map, there is a road map, the road map to bodhicitta is first to engage in the common paths. The common path, that is the part that is common with the person of small capacity and then middling capacity. And with the small capacity, then this afternoon we were talking about high rebirth, and high rebirth in a causal form, the 10 virtuous actions. So this is more or less the path that occurs with the person of small capacity, and then gradually into liberation, then the path that occurs with the person of middling capacity. And once having a good basis in these two foundational practices, and then to gradually develop bodhicitta, so there is this, so that there is like this seamless transition into bodhicitta, from wishing for liberation for oneself to wishing for liberation for all others. So I think like this. Yes, I think. Thank you.
Rinpoche, we have some questions online.
Please.
Can you hear me? I can hear. Okay. Rinpoche, you used the word impartial, as well as indicating a kind of equality. You mentioned that this may take the sting out of meditating on the suffering of suffering. Personally, I do not find all pervasive conditioned suffering to be easier to meditate on. I find it more intense. So I'm curious if you find this to be the case also.
When we focus on the suffering of suffering, I feel that in most scenarios, it will be that we may be generating compassion on a certain person or a certain group that is going through a certain experience, and what they are going through is not necessarily, in most scenarios, is probably not necessarily my situation. I'm not going through those experiences. This is my feeling when we focus on the suffering, the first type of suffering. Because if we are having the same, going through the same experiences, in most cases it will be quite difficult to even experience compassion at that moment, right? Because that intense pain is something that we are experiencing now. So in most cases, that's why in most cases I have a feeling that when we use compassion practice and focusing on the first type of suffering of others, then we are usually practicing compassion, and there is this separation that their experience is what I'm experiencing, I'm not experiencing what they are going through right now. Whereas with the suffering, the third type, suffering of conditionality, then this is shared. This is very much shared suffering. This is, I think, in most cases, it would be a shared suffering. So there's the feeling we are all in this together. And since, and not only that, there's one other difference, being that it was not a person that has put us in this state of suffering. So, in other words, there is no blame game, right? We cannot hold one person accountable for this state. So this helps. This is, I think, one reason how this can be impartial in that sense. Whereas, especially in the context of those who are in war-torn areas and really feeling the effects, going through the sufferings that comes with all the harmful actions, then if you're not careful, then we may end up having sense of aversion against those who are committing and bringing so much harm, right? So that was the thinking. That was the thinking. And going back to that question, as we find ourselves in all this suffering that is very much being experienced by so many all over, the most important thing in this time is to not lose our compassion. Is not to lose our compassion. This is, I think, really the point. Difficult it may be, but I think we all know that this is the way. Do not fall into the pitfalls of anger, of aversion, which can even evolve into hatred. Hatred for a sentient being or a group of sentient beings. So then, to really to not lose one's composure in these times, I think it's really something like the need of the hour. Right here, right now. To not lose our composure with anything, with everything, with all the mess that's happening around us. If we think about it, a person who is very much harming, doing so much harm, causing much hurt, is also suffering, just as the person that he has inflicted such suffering. That person, to never forget that the tormentor, the so-called tormentor, is also very much being tormented by the mind poisons, by hatred, by ignorance, by fear. So really to, in a way, to take a few steps back and then to look at it, to take a holistic approach. And whenever we engage in the practice of compassion, to never leave ourselves out of compassion, to never leave ourselves out. Because if we do that, then this compassion, I don't know, then this could be on something like borderline pity. You know, if we exclude ourselves from all these sufferings and try to include others in our compassion, then this could be detrimental. This could be something like limiting. It could limit really our compassion from what it can be, from its full potential. So to always try to include ourselves within our compassion practice, together with all others, I think it's very helpful and helps stabilize, bring stability to our compassion, to our minds, really, to our minds, and not to not this form, in a way, our compassion practice, it's really about tolerance. I don't know if tolerance is the exact word, but sometimes, I think many times, we associate, you have to have compassion, be tolerant. Somehow there's a link, it seems. If that is the case, then to practice compassion is to practice tolerance. And to practice tolerance is really to tolerate intolerance. Is it not? So, if I say, I'm tolerant of tolerant people, but not tolerant of intolerant people, then I'm not being very tolerant. So then we really have to work on this. This is something that cannot be, that cannot be left behind, It cannot be like sort of be put up in the cupboard and locked, but rather it should be displayed openly and bring it right in front, and then to look at it with our bare eyes, and then work on that, to deal with that, to work on that, to work on that. And when it seems difficult, then we have always the teachings to rely upon, all these teachings. It gives such good methods of how to bring peace in our minds, how to bring peace in our minds. like this. And then shall we continue?
Next question is, Rinpoche, can it be said that our self-cherishing that has put us in samsara in the first place is also giving us a reference point, a familiar feeling that we can use for cherishing others? And so it is a matter of shifting the object of our cherishing from ourself to other beings?
Yes. Yes. I think so, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Next question is on, when reflecting on the suffering of others, I try not to get emotionally involved, as I dislike the feeling of getting upset or having my mental peace being disturbed. But I wonder what is a balance between developing empathy for others while still maintaining my own mental peace. Can you please advise?
When did this question come? Was it a few minutes back or just now?
A few minutes back.
Okay. Maybe 10 minutes back?
Probably. Yes, probably.
More than that? Okay, 10 minutes, okay. Then I think
10 minutes back, yeah.
I think we are good for now. Yes. Yes.
You mentioned idle talk. Would you define what you mean by idle talk? Do you mean harmful talk? Do you mean talk that does not have a positive result? As long as talk is not harmful, we will never know the long or short-term result of a conversation. Not having simple, easy conversations with people can have a negative result because they feel ignored. Maybe it's just best to just play it by ear. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes. I feel like I'm now, taking the exams for the Geshe again. Yes. Idle chatter. Well, in one sense, it's in the name, idle. When you turn on the car, but what is that called? Like just idling, right? And if you don't move forward or backwards and just stay there and just go, that's idling, right? So it's a bit like that, I guess. Just to use the car analogy. But maybe this only works with combustion engines, not with EV. EV might be a different story, but with combustion engines, yes. I think there is such thing as idling. So a bit of idle is fine, but if you idle for too much, then you don't move forward, you don't move backward, you don't go anywhere, and still you have to pay for gasoline. Yes. So then it's so it's like that. Yes. Oh.
Rinpoche, in reference to what we've been talking about with developing equalizing and developing it on the basis of pervasive suffering rather than the suffering of suffering. If I were to look at that from the context of the 5 Buddha families and to look at the Ratna family, for example, and look at, okay, then equalizing, there's an awareness, an equalizing awareness that we're developing, I can see how it all comes together. Then I'm looking at the klesha within that family, and the klesha within that family is pride. So would that be the pride of holding that false identity that we are for ourselves? Is that the klesha that we're talking about? That's the first question.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
And the second question is, for the life of me, I can't seem to know what increase has to do with all of this, because that would be the resulting power that once we develop equalizing, like pacification, wrathful, subjugation, then we have increase. And I'm not sure where increase comes in, and I have no idea what increases. Is it compassion that increases? What is increasing? And can you please explain that a little bit?
Oh, regarding Ratna Sambhava.
Yes.
Ratna Sambhava, I think, when we do this throwing the tooth stick, you know, for empowerments, for what was it? Checking the attainments, right? Then I believe it goes counterclockwise. So if I'm standing in front of, let's say, the mandala like this, or okay, the mandala like this, and if this is the if this is the box, right? If this is the box, so you're here, and then the mandala is here. This would be pacification, right? And then this would be increase. This would be subjugation, and then this would be wrathful. So Ratna Sambhava, so then it would be Ratna Sambhava is in the south, right?
Yes.
In the south. So connected with Ratna Sambhava, somehow it is the wrathful, and with Amoga Siddhi, it is the increase, connected with increase, when we do counterclockwise. And this counterclockwise is not only in the context for Mother Tantra, but also for Father Tantra as well. For example, for Vajrabhairava, then when we throw the tooth stick, Soshing, it is also in the same order. It goes from, it's counterclockwise. So it's maybe even though Ratna Sambhava, usually we would go like this, then naturally increase is connected with Ratna Sambhava, and also the color there is yellow, also signifying increase, right? But it seems that when we throw this during the pre-empowerment, the preparatory part, when we throw this tooth stick, then perhaps we say like the wrathful deities reside in the south, so somehow that direction is related with south is related with the wrathful aspect. So Shikya Wangtao like this. So this was just it had nothing to do with your question. So then Prana Sambhava increase, and here increasing, I think, the qualities, increasing compassion. So like this, I think they are all connected, like this. Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Yeah.
So Rinpoche, you said that we should develop tolerance towards the intolerant. Are you suggesting that we should be tolerant of racist and spreaders of vaccine misinformation? Is this what you're saying? Like Tony Fauci, for example.
Tolerant here, I think, tolerance and patience here, in my understanding, in this context, same. Tolerance and patience, forbearance, same in this context. One of the 6 perfections. So, to tolerate means not simply to something like to be in denial, not that. Tolerance is really about, even though we say to tolerate the intolerant people or intolerant ideas, intolerant speeches, in reality, when we put into practice, then it is to tolerate our minds, not letting it go astray, not falling, not negatively reacting to abusive speech, abuse in any form, harmful actions, physical, verbal, or mental, not to fall victim, in a way, not to become a victim of abuse, of harmful actions. When we react negatively, then we have then become a victim. In a way, we have sort of like, we have then took on the bait, right? So, to control ourselves and to stay grounded in that moment, to not lose one's calmness. So this is, I think, the meaning of tolerance, patience, forbearance. It is not simply to say, oh, let these people abuse me. Not to say that. Of course, as we were talking about boundaries, if we cannot handle it, it is very important to draw boundaries. This is so important, It's very important. But at the same time, to not react negatively, to not lose our composure. That is also that is what patience and tolerance practice is. In the face of adversity, in the face of unpleasantness, etc., harm like that, then to not lose our something like sanity, our composure, our minds, our integrity. So in this way, then patience and tolerance, it's really about safeguarding our qualities, right? To upholding the good qualities of the mind. That is, I think, that is why patience, tolerance is so valuable, is that it safeguards and sustains our qualities in difficult times. So I think like this, yeah.
Yeah, regarding the boundaries, I have, you mentioned earlier when you said that we should not be jumping straight away into bodhicitta and cherish, and you said, gave a number of examples what you meant by jumping into it, and started with opening the doors, and you said closing the boundaries, not do that. Okay, and I think you meant opening the boundaries, not closing the boundaries. You meant doing away with the boundaries, right? Or the borders. Remember when you said that? Yeah, you said that is what you said. So it seems to me that there might be a misunderstanding. Perhaps you meant open the boundaries, open the borders, right? Open the doors.
Could you say the other words?
The other words,
near
I'm not sure exactly. Well, you said that you were talking, the question was about cherishing, how to develop cherishing
do not
others.
jump straight into it?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. And you gave a number of examples, and I don't remember what
right.
first. And then you said the one preceding just this, the one that I'm talking about was open the doors, and then you said close the boundaries. You meant open the boundaries. Don't open the boundaries, right?
So
close the boundaries, meaning you meant shut down the boundaries or do away with the boundaries. Don't do that.
This is at when we have to be careful.
Right.
This is at that stage,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Before like jumping into full bodhicitta mode, right? So when we have to work with in the initial stages, then yes, to have boundaries.
Right. You did not mean close the boundaries. That's what you said. You said close the boundaries. You
no, we're
meant
closing
don't
the boundaries.
It's a double closing, you're saying. Boundaries are closed. They're setting parameters.
Yeah, but you meant don't open the boundaries. Don't do away with the boundaries, right? Keep your boundaries. That's what you meant, right?
What did I say?
You said don't open the doors. You said don't open the doors. Don't close the boundaries.
Okay. Don't open the doors. Okay,
Yeah.
don't open the doors.
Don't close the boundaries.
Don't close the boundaries.
Yes. What did you mean by that? Yeah, because that contradicts don't open the doors. Yeah, he said boundaries, but he said don't close the boundaries. And I assumed that you meant don't shut down the boundaries, don't open the borders. In that regard, I'm reminded of the Dalai Lama. Some years ago, there was an influx of refugees from Syria, and he said that Germany cannot become an Arab or Muslim country. It's good to help them, but then eventually they should go back to Syria. And of course, there was an uproar from the left when he said that, but nevertheless, that's an example of the same thing, isn't it?
Oh, yes. But whatever boundary that I was talking about wasn't like, like country, not like that, but at the personal level, right? At the personal level. So if I'm on the level of non-contrived bodhicitta and I have to I'm beginning at in the initial stages, then it is better for me to set up boundaries. So I would go with that, and if I said something that contradicts this previously, then whatever I said previously I was wrong. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Forgive me, my question is sort of forming as I go along here. I practice psychotherapy, and I think Buddhism, the practices of Buddhism and the concepts and constructs of self and the elusive construct of self is fascinating in the work that I do. But I also have to tell you, and maybe you can offer me a way to navigate this differently, some of it clashes with the work that I do. And I'll tell you why. Sometimes people come in to talk to me who are working from wounded parts of themselves that are younger wounded parts, whether it's a dependent part, a critical part, a codependent part, a fractured part. And what seems to be helpful is for me to help them anchor into an adult part of themselves, an adult part of themselves where they can contain these wounded, splintered parts of themselves. So I go back and forth in my mind that I am very interested in the ideas of Buddhism and how the self is often is mostly elusive. And yet here I am, I'm really trying to help someone anchor into their adult self. I'm really fundamentally sort of practicing something that I can see holes in. And it's effective having someone anchor into an adult part of themselves where they can feel solid and be able to contain these parts of themselves. So I'm not ready to abandon it, but I'd like you perhaps offer a way that I might be able to hold both of those ideas in the same head.
Yes, yes.
I hope that made sense.
Yes, yes. I agree with what you said. And in Buddhism, of course, we do not deny the existence of the self, right? We do not deny it. Of course, we exist. I exist. Everybody exists. So, self on that level, of course, exists. And this is the basis of samsara and nirvana. Self is the basis of samsara and nirvana. There are different parts. We go through different parts in our lives, and especially looking at past traumatic events, then this is, I think, very difficult, naturally, of course. Anyone who has experienced trauma would find it difficult. The thing about this is to come to peace with that situation. To come to peace with, let's say, a person who has inflicted this trauma upon me many, many years back. To come to peace with that person this is really key for that healing process. And many of, our teachers who fled Tibet in 1959, around those times, and then came here and helped to establish the monasteries. They all have these stories to share of all these traumatic events in their life. Yet I've never seen them suffer when they told those stories. They told these stories as like matter of fact. There was no sense of trauma there. So the question is, how? Why weren't these people traumatized to the extent that so many others are? And I think it is because they have made peace with the tormentors, with those who inflicted so much harm on themselves, on their relatives, on their friends. And part of that coming to peace with the people who caused so much, who inflicted so much pain and hurt, part of that really that would, a big part of that, a major part of that is to really to separate the person from the person's actions, to separate the person from the person's emotions, afflictive emotions. In other words, to not see the person who inflicts so much pain as the personification of evil, of just evil, So to really separate this is one thing. And then based on this, then to acknowledge that this person, due to ignorance, mainly it all comes down to ignorance, didn't know better, was misinformed with misconceptions. And there are plenty of misconceptions, especially, nowadays through our socials. If you're not careful, it is like the breeding ground of misconceptions. Our socials. So we have to always just take it and then not really hold on to it, to not really hold on to that. It really requires to letting it go. Just to end on a funny note, I think there was one movie called Frozen, right? And there was one song, Let It Go, something like that. And my nieces, one time when I visited my sister, they were really into that song, and they would always play that song, Let It Go. And then here I'm listening, and then I'm like, oh, this is a really good song, Let it go, at some point. So anyhow, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Oh, Dagi Jini Sabi Gewandi Tendan Ro Guna Kambe Kebara Jizu Lozan Davai Tembe Nyumbo Rindo Seje Sho
Andun de je jongge shinye jo yang de shinye wangbo sawa jende songwe chana bime don dembe zawa sozo ndawa nanda zure yanda lamba ye lozan jede bedo jade Dezan jaje nezo yambe she sanjo naje jazan jombe Gonjo shalo sonjo debut Dembe ngando jembo jane jo jebe ndanga gowa poje Zebe rela zebe monda je zombe dene leje tenjara Kero shenye jembo jane jo kebe lander goje zedara Zembe chara onye zora ze Sambo ende je rekon yeshen ne sonde shenye jembo jane Zezon dola jeve dende ge menjon taju zome seje La jen zene dendro peshabe tsende shenye jembo jane Jozon jawa seje jen lo dan do de danje some chale Daja khazan dabe dendo Membe de go nyendo jo jize la me go de ra de je nangar jenle jo jo je ba no lo zan dembe de me za zo Rave me se na do ne jo ro e je yen jambe ba wo je na ra jamba na gondo zambo de yan de je Tena gunji jesu ndalo je gyawan de da dan je ra do ngon du son shibe gyawan dan kan lai chu du ngamba de da ge ge be za wan de go sambo je je ra do ngon wa je damba Allah na me be damba dan jawan Lame yin be gyawan de yan do wa ma le Xin yan dambe jesu zero ngo ben de yin damba si bi da ngen do long ge nambar me yo Dembe nga ze jene damba la ye je nye be da Kawa shon dene jove denye se ze ba do be le za gyawan dan je Le na so jan dane zemba la geje zaya la Majuru je jamba chude kawa pame ge ne de nyebo zene dropa Naga shiki be ora junye be nambara jebe nye zen dabara sho janjo senjo rembo Maje badan je juru je jawa nyamba meba Gone gondo bewara sho bama senje nanje dena denjuru je nyero danje dado nowa chanjo zamba gana susho bande da gunje malanyo ba Gara rave kuve shaka zu bedan dewa malu juve ne jere sewa tenze Sede bado denjuru ji jize lami guze rade je nangara tenle chuju je badan losa dembe demeza Drove mese nando nejuru ji jewa gondo yanda lama nan deme chuju bela lonji Sada lanje yende razo ne doje jangi gobo nyando sho shuji nyabo zonga Shuji nambara bewa dan geje zemo shewa dan denje ma Tawara sho dana shinji disun dan jivi tsonye lan dene jawa lo sandaba Dhamma yore bajuru ji sanji kuson nyebe chenla dan junye mejara dembe chenla Gene meje dembe chenla ji jedara ngwa men Dro bara yesho